First on the agenda is public comment. There's no one here for public comment, and there were no emails submitted this week. So I think we can just jump right into new business, which the first item is finalize the date and time for public hearing on proposed amendments to the charter, which the original proposed meeting schedule had that for June 6th. But we had a conflict, or we wanted to go, as I recall from the last meeting, we wanted to consider having that meeting in the evening. Right? That was what the issue was. We were all sort of in agreement there that we should, right?
People would be available.
Okay, and was there a conflict with the school committee or something? Sorry, Larissa. I'm trying to remember. I know that somebody mentioned a conflict with school committee.
I mentioned a possible conflict because they do meet on Monday nights. I'm not sure if they'll meet. It's probably will be. It's the first Monday of the month, but.
Councillor Hanselman had mentioned there might be a conflict with an event for some of the graduates.
Oh, is that Project Grad? No. Well, whatever.
Possibly, is there a dinner that night?
I don't remember, and I have a graduate. Well, what would our alternatives be then? We could go to a different night of the week.
So that 6th, as Councilor Stackpole indicated, that would be a normally scheduled night for the school committee, but of course, project graduation, so I don't know how that impacts it. City Council is the evening of the 7th. It's a regular scheduled meeting. So I'm not aware that there's anything booked here for the 8th.
What time is the city council meeting?
6 o'clock.
Still too early, probably. The 8th would be a Wednesday.
And many times the council has a 5 o'clock executive before the regular meeting at 6.
The 8th would work for me. Wednesday, the 8th.
I'm all set with the 8th.
It's a Wednesday evening.
Oh, graduation. Wednesday, the 8th doesn't work for me.
Planning board, yeah.
When,
Yeah.
let's go the other way. So Wednesday, the 8th doesn't work. That's graduation. Could we go just a week later on Monday? We have all these placeholder meetings that we don't need.
That's a good idea.
Can we just go to Monday, the
13th?
13th? And based on our level of participation so far, this meeting might take 10 minutes.
Well, and if anybody's going to comment on anything, the bulk of the red line, really, if you look at it, the work is all in Chapter 6. There's a lot that went on there, so.
Yeah. Any problems with June 13th? What time of the meeting, what time of the evening would that usually be, Steve?
6?
6,
p.m.
okay. So let's do 6 o'clock on June 13th. Is there any requirement about the number of us that need to be here during that meeting if there are conflicts? No, probably not.
It would be good to have a quorum.
Okay.
So it's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
4.
4.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 or more.
As long as 4 of us are here.
You don't count, do you?
No, I'm just advisory, so yes. Yeah, 4 would do it.
All right. So June 13th, 6 o'clock. And then, I guess while we're on this topic, is there because we moved relatively quickly here, or on time, I guess, is there any way of moving up the back end of this? The presentation for the city council is currently for July 19th. I'll forget everything we talked about between now and July 19th.
Can I back up for half a second?
Sure.
We're just checking calendars, and it looks like the school committee has something scheduled on both the 6th and the 13th. I will need to check with them, but that's what's in both the chamber's calendar and the online streaming calendar at at 6 PM on both dates.
So is there a problem with doing it on the 6th if they're doing nothing on the 6th?
It's not a problem with me if they're not doing anything on the 6th. No, there was Project Grad that night, and if we want to make it so members of the public could be here and not have a conflict. Again,
If you would like me to, I can email while you're meeting and see
Yeah,
if I can get a response back from
let's
them.
do it on the 6th if we can. We're just not going to get that, based on the number of people that have been here, I just can't imagine this being a huge
There's a
conflict.
guy that would know right there.
Yes.
He'll probably know.
Boy, do we have questions for you.
It's just about the use of the council chambers. You're on the calendar for both June 6th and June 13th.
Yes,
And those are real? Those are,
June 3rd, yes, they are both very real. We have the Juneteenth holiday is being celebrated on the 20th, which is normally when we were there, and so we're not available to go on the 27th, so we're looking at
Got it.
the 13th. Not finalized, we have a meeting tonight, we'll finalize that date, but right now, that's the one that is tentatively out there.
okay. So the 8th was Wednesday. The 8th was a Wednesday. Can't do that because that's graduation. How about the 15th of June, which is another Wednesday?
Works for me.
Okay. June 15th. Wednesday, June 15th, 6 PM. So then back to the other question, and Larissa, I don't know if this is a you question or a Steve question. Is there any, because you and Larissa and I had this conversation about the order of things and having to work backwards when we first did the proposed meeting schedule. So right now, the city council vote is on August 2nd. The recommendations to the city council are on July 19th. Are there any ways to move either of those dates forward further, so we're done?
June 15th is planning board.
Yes,
June 1st is a Wednesday. That just screws up the Zoom thing, I think.
correct. So the chambers will be available, but we need to stream the planning board meeting on the 15th.
Well, and Jack wouldn't be available because he's on the planning board.
Yeah, it's just, we Zoom now, and it's streamed, so you wouldn't be able to stream.
We can't do multiple streams.
Yeah, my son is visiting from Philadelphia beginning June 11th for a week. So, I mean, I would have no problem with a brief Zoom meeting, but if we can't Zoom, I likely wouldn't be able to make a meeting during that week.
Today.
About Thursday, the 9th?
Okay with me?
The calendar looks
Like we're just having
clear
a
on
hard
that
time
date.
with the first part of the week, so.
Thursday, the 9th. Can we do Thursday, the 9th? You're talking about going back to daytime?
I just said if we can't find
Yeah.
something, maybe you'll have to go back to the daytime, and that's where it has to be. So you
I don't have my calendar, but I'll make myself available for Thursday, the 9th at this point. All right, so let's set that, Thursday, the 9th, 6 PM, until somebody says, now there's another conflict. All right, so then the other question of trying to move,
Excuse me, and we'll be able to Zoom that on the 9th?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
6 PM.
Yep.
So is there a way to move the city council vote quicker than August 2nd?
Let's see, if you do it on the 9th, you could do it on the 21st. I don't believe, we're not doing a public hearing at that point at the council level, are we? It's just a presentation to the council.
There's, on our agenda was public hearing on proposed amendments on July 19th.
If you met on the 9th, we had the public hearing ad ready to go for the 10th, right?
So there's a city council meeting scheduled for the July 19th. There's one scheduled for July 5th. in theory, you could,
Well, I was looking at the June 21st meeting. Would you want to do it that early?
yep.
June
you could-
21st for the city council?
You could do that.
But, and then when would public hearing be? Or does there not need to be a separate public hearing?
The council would have to do a public hearing for anything that they're proposing to go forward. That would be a mandatory part of the referendum vote. So that would come at a later date.
So that is not required on our agenda.
No.
We just have to make the presentation to the council. June 21st, you said?
But I think the presentation, when you do it at the council, you wanted that to be a public hearing, though.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the way we had it scheduled. Right?
That's how we had scheduled it.
Yep.
I think
And
it's,
that timing is doable.
Okay.
and I think it's best to do it as a public hearing so that, you know, the people that are zooming in or here live, if we're live at that point in time, that they can be here to lend comment. So it gives another opportunity.
So that's June 21st.
Correct. And then that would give the council another whole month to work on the recommendations that come forward.
Okay, let's plan on that. And I guess while we're at it, since this is the last time, what does that presentation, so I'm assuming I'm the one presenting as chairperson? What does that, am I just reading the strike-through versions, or?
So I would give them the red line version.
It seems like a cumbersome thing to present.
I think I would give them the red line version, and then we can compress it down to a memo. Here's the areas of key changes. There's not a large number of articles in here, really,
Okay,
in the red line part. So it's really about articles, chapter 6 and some other areas, but that and the definitions.
okay. We'll figure that part out, I guess.
Zoom into that, or?
Yeah. I'm hoping we have AC going by the 21st, because it's rather uncomfortable in here without any air handling system going, but we're supposed to.
There's a reason I chose to stay at my office.
All right, so,
I just went into the apartment of a 91-year-old tenant who doesn't use AC and doesn't have his windows open. So I thought, I'm going to multiply that times 10 and stay in my office.
all right, so that meeting is on June 21st. Our next meeting is, I've lost track of what that date was going to be.
The 9th,
The 9th, okay, thank you. And that's a Thursday,
yes.
okay. And those should be our last remaining meetings, okay, very good. All right, so everybody has the red line copy of the charter in front of them, hopefully? All right, so I'm just going to go through here, and we'll do kind of like we did before, except I'm only going to cover the sections that have the red lines. And I'm just going to name the section, and if anybody wants to speak up with any issues they have with whatever the red line version is, just stop us. So we start with section, Article 1, Section 102.
So on the red line version, that just kind of reads odd, unless I was reading it wrong. It says, "All legislative powers of the city shall be vested in the city council, except that and school budget shall be adopted." That just, is that just me, or does that?
Mine has the strike through all the way through. I also found it weird because mine says, or I'm reading it, "All legislative powers of the city shall be vested in the city council, except shall be adopted."
It should be except that the school budget shall be adopted.
Yeah, that's
The strike
what
was
I was
off.
thinking.
Okay,
The strike is off one word either way, that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
as well.
Let me ask you a question. Is this entirely necessary? Because if we keep it to Article 7, it's already excluded the municipal budget. I mean, I know it's redundant, but I mean, everything has to be voted on, so.
Yeah, so I don't have the legal opinion on that yet, Maura, but, you know, my production of the red line was finding all of those areas that if you're taking that out of Article 6, Section 6 and 7, then, well, 7, Article 7, that you need to go back and find all of those areas that it was called out.
Maura, are you saying you want the whole sentence removed potentially?
No, I'm saying that if Article 7 has already eliminated the budget, the more we take out of something that I know it's redundant and it doesn't need to be there anymore, and it would be nice to clean it up, but every cleanup has to have a vote.
Right, but so, yeah.
But we have to clean this part up because,
You don't have to, because Article 7 already eliminated the budget vote.
so you're saying we could leave this here saying, except the municipal budget and school budget shall be adopted by voters. But then-
As in Article 7, and Article 7 has already eliminated. So that's my question. It's like, so people, if they see that change, they, you know, there's a potential they vote against it, thinking that they're gonna get the budget vote back, which is not what it means. It actually just is cleanup. Because the budget, the vote has gone away because Article 7 sunsetted it. And so you're cleaning up something that, yeah, it's kind of annoying to have there, but you're gonna have to, that's a vote that has to be taken, and people are gonna believe it, voting no means one thing, when in actuality, it's just a piece of cleanup language.
The flip side more, though, is if you leave it, then it gives the impression, if you're not aware that Article 7 takes the power away, it gives the impression that the voters are still voting on the municipal and school budget.
Yep, but remember, everything has to be voted on, so it's gonna be, keep that in mind, as we go through this, just keep that in mind.
Yes, so Maura, I think that would stand legal muster, you know, to leave this Section 102 completely intact with no amendment, and then the amendments, as you're referring to, would be in Article 7. So I've got that in my notes for review when we send this over to legal counsel. So if we can finish the red line review today, I'll
Yep.
push this over to Phil Saucer immediately.
I'm only talking about what do we have to do, what do we really want to do versus what do we, you know, what would be just adding another question on the ballot that doesn't need to necessarily be there. I guess that's part of what I'm saying. So this is a good example of it. We don't have to go into detail if I point it out again. You'll know what I mean, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And does it matter that the school budget is up for vote this particular one every 3 years about whether or not they want, the citizens want that?
So when I rewrote Articles 6 and 7, most of that language is in Section 7. I specifically referenced the state statutes in there as amended from time to time, so that's what we're leaning on, rather than try to put all those moving parts directly into the charter. I brought only those elements in that I felt had to be, with a constant reference to 20A as to where that comes from. Because the state, so the moral of the story is there, the state occupied the space, took it away from us as far as home rule. We no longer can establish that by charter or home rule. The state occupied that space, and they said, thou shalt approve the school budget in this manner. Stripped it from us.
So putting it there, though, similar, right? If it does, if by chance it's voted out this June,
Right, you're still going to go to Article 7.
Okay.
And in Article 7, if they vote that out this June,
Yep.
there's no way. But if they did,
Right.
you're okay.
okay.
Yep.
Does anybody else feel strongly on this? I'd be inclined to strike it out and have it be part of a vote, but it seems to have a conflict in this section, and Article 7 seems unnecessary to me, but. You think it should be struck?
Yeah, I agree. I think striking it makes it clearer on the intention of it. But, so does the vote have to be section by section, or can it be sort of topical? In other words,
No, it's section by
it's got to
section.
be section by section. So every section,
So what happens if this gets rejected, but whatever's in Article 7 gets approved?
it's still, then it works still. Just messier.
It's messy, yep.
I think you could even simplify it further. Well, maybe you can do that. Except, and just say, except as provided in Article 7 of this chapter, because Article 7 covers the vote, so then no matter what happens, it's,
Well, I agree with Maura's reading on this. If we just leave this alone, it says, except that, it provided in Article 7, that's where the true change takes place. That's where it's at. So
But-
7's either going to get voted up or down, and 6 is either going to get voted up or down.
Well, why,
Parts.
sorry, why doesn't why doesn't Dave's suggestion work? Except as provided in Article 7, and then you're referring to whatever is in Article 7.
You can make that red line change. They would vote on that one section, Section 102, the amendment there too. They would vote on that separately.
I think what Maura's saying is it's trying to get away from voting on this section at all.
Then you don't get into that question, what if they vote no on this, but yes on something else, or the other way around?
It's, yeah.
I think you could leave this alone.
You could, it's too bad to have different things written in different places, even though one sort of overrules the other. But
In 10 years, they're going to be looking at this being like, why does this say,
why'd you leave that in?
why does this say the municipal budget is adopted by the voters?
Good point.
Further discussion, or are we willing to go with Maura's recommendation?
I think it might be be a good idea to get a legal opinion on. Honestly, I'd like to see it shortened. As I said, take that language right out of there and just say as provided in Article 7. That way, when the school vote comes out, it doesn't say shall be adopted by the voters
And I'm not
as
sure why.
provided in Article 7.
And why would a voter vote against that?
Because then it comes down to the explanation. Well, yes, this says
Unless they were
that
gonna
it
vote against
shall be
Article 7
adopted
anyway.
by the voters. But if you actually read Article 7, we're no longer doing that because, it just, I don't know, makes it confusing.
Yeah. I'm inclined to make the reference to Article 7 as well.
Take it all out.
So how do we proceed then? Do we need a vote to either strike it or not strike it, leave it alone, or make the reference to Article 7?
So if you would, let me get a legal opinion on this. If we have to make an amendment here because of what's being proposed in Article 7, so it would be, one of three things. It would be strike that sentence in its entirety and let it revert only to Article 7.
Yep.
It would be amend the sentence to take out just the municipal piece. And the third would be to just leave it alone because it's going to be defined in Article 7. That would be the three options.
And what if the legal opinion is we could do any of the three?
I'll give you a call.
Okay. All right, I guess we'll move forward. Wow, that was the first one. All right, we are moving to Article 2, though. There were no other amendments in Article 1. Article 2, Section 204.
So this, I put this in here, it was not a specific comment, as I went into the definitions, so each of the definitions that were added in 1114 or wherever that article is, there's no, when you look at state law, the city council is the municipal legislative body. Nowhere in this charter does it define it as such, although they are. So that's why I put the reference in here as a municipal legislative body, and you'll see that in the definitions. There's references in here as to the city council, being the body and such under that, but it really doesn't get so deep as to go to what they actually are in state laws. They are the municipal legislative body. That's why I put it in here.
Okay. And that's, again, an example of something the voters are going to have to vote on adding that.
So when you look at the definitions, each time that I went in and because some of these took more than one draft, when I put a definition in, didn't change any of it, I put a definition in, I would then do a word search in the charter and find every location where that was referenced and see, does this draft fit the context of where it appears in the charter. So I went through to the best of my ability and did that for each definition that I added in.
Any issues there? 205.1. We talked about that. 205.2.
Well, the reason I put...
Sorry, 205.1, do you think voter members is the right way to phrase it, or public members? I'm just asking.
Yeah, so in Article 6, they are defined and referred to as voter members. So I didn't want to have the city council appoint the members, because they're only appointing the voter members, because everybody else is elected.
Right.
The council and the school board.
Okay.
And then the same reference in 205.2. Oops. Sorry, looking for the next red line. Looks like 212.2. Immediately.
Yeah, that's a good one.
212.3. 216.
Oh, that's a name change. So I don't know if legal review is going to allow us to look. The State Department of Audit is now the Office of the State Auditor. If we can just do that name change without having to have that voter approved, I suspect that that's the case, but
Okay.
but let me ask.
Article 3. Doesn't look like there's anything in Article 3. Article 4. 402.3. This is adding the assessor per our last meeting.
Yeah, so when you get into, I can't remember what article the assessing department is called out. So it provides for an appointed assessor, which I went in and looked, assessor versus assessor's agent versus a board of assessment, so we're okay there. But it made a wrong reference. It says shall be appointed as in Article 3, it's actually Article 4, right? So it's this 402, Article 4 is where the city manager hires a qualified individual and then takes that person for approval to be appointed by the council. For whatever reason, the assessor was never listed in here and should have been listed in here.
Yep.
And so I've corrected it here and I've corrected it in that article as well.
402.10. That's it for Article 4. Article 5. There is nothing. Article 6. Section 602.1.
So that's
This
where
is just the reference to the five members of the public, 7 elected city council, and 5 elected Board of Education members.
And then there was a question on there as to whether term limits for voter members, I don't feel there should be. But
I don't think there should be either. Does anybody feel like there should be term limits for the voter members?
No. There's no term limits for a city council or school committee, so no. It's just top, chairs, that's all.
Chair people, yep.
Yeah, that's all we have it for.
602.2, that's minor. 603,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can we go back to 602.1 just for
Sure.
a question? What happens if of the 5 citizens, what happens if one of those seats goes unfilled? In other words, nobody runs for it.
Well, they're not running, we have to beg people to do it.
Well, are they running for the seat?
No.
Okay, so
No,
who's, I'm sorry, I
council's-
missed something. Who's appointing them?
the city council.
City council. Okay, all set.
Do we want to say members of up to 5? Do we need to say that, or does,
Actually, we talked about that, haven't we?
we did talk about that, but, you know, what if, what if they can't get 5? Does that cause a problem that it says 5 in the charter?
I think we should try to, as much as possible, stick to the 5 appointed. If all 7 counselors or if all 5 school committee members aren't there, I think that's less important than, you know, that's another totally different problem. But it would be nice to have the 5 public so that people have some faith in, you know.
But does it cause a problem if you can't find 5 members of the public willing to serve and the charter says 5 appointed members?
It causes a problem, but to say the up to 5 would change quorum and everything else in a lot of parts of this section. So you really need to say it's the 5 and make it the 5. I think part of the balancing act and presenting this to the public as far as education is concerned is that you're bolstering the, let's see, so we have what? We have 7. So you're increasing the number on the budget committee by 10. You're increasing the voter representatives from 3 to 5, and then you're putting your entire elected body, both the council and the school board, onto the budget committee. So that's a lot of citizens' representation on there. I think that's the balancing act that goes with all of this presentation.
But a vacant seat doesn't stop the process.
That was my question.
It'd be no different than if you have all 5 appointed and somebody poorly attends or something like that. It wouldn't stop the process. So
All right.
it may make it harder to get your quorum, but it wouldn't stop the process.
602.2,
So something like 602.2, simply the typographic edit there, it was just, I don't think we're going to have to go.
I was going to say, does that have to be?
I don't think it does, no, because it's a de minimis. It doesn't change the composition or intent. So.
All right. 6, and so,
But
is
also
that subject to legal
understanding is
opinion then?
This whole article is going to go forward in its amended form. This Article 6.
For one vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I don't see how any of these stand as sections that could be, done independently. I think it's the whole thing goes.
Okay. So it's one vote on the whole article. All right. 603. We can leave that because it says may set compensation. It doesn't mean they are going to set compensation, just gives council the ability to be able to do so. 605.2, 605.3,
That worked pretty nice going from 7 to 17, huh?
I thought that was pretty slick.
Looked at that, it's pretty good.
610.3. My only question on this was, I believe I had talked about, where it was discussed in the meeting that we wouldn't get to 7.5 by the time we got to the 10 years. And one way you could do that would be the 0.33% per year instead of 0.25, but I mean, I don't have a big issue here.
I didn't send that to you, did I? I did an Excel sheet on that. Let me grab that. I'm very comfortable with that.
Or maybe it is, actually, maybe the quarter point per year, it depends if it's compounding, I guess.
Well,
If it's compounding, then maybe you do get that.
It is compounding. It would be
Okay.
4%, right? Yeah, because because the budget's bigger, so it's a percentage of the
Yeah,
budget.
if
You are compounding.
it's compounding, maybe you do get there in 10 years at a quarter.
Yeah.
well, let me go send that to myself. I don't have it open here. All right, I'll be right back.
All right, we'll go forward and come back. 611.1. 612.3. 614. 618. 619. there's a lot there, but I don't have issue with it, given the vote that we took. 619.2, 250 to $1 million.
And we talked about a CPI adjustment, but I think we decided that would be too complicated just to
Yep.
do the million. Yeah.
619.3,
This jump is because of CPI, I'm assuming.
Article 7, 702. This is the striking of the municipal budget from here. 703. Are we still in 703? 703.
The only thing I want to make sure of is, as we're doing this, is that this allows for, if the voters vote to not have the school budget by state law, it doesn't make a mandate to have that vote even without the state law. I mean, we have to do it every 3 years to vote to do it or not do it anyway, so it consistently keeps it in people's minds. I just want to make sure we're not, like, we're following state law at 100% follow state law. So that would be my only note to the attorney.
So if they vote not to vote on the school budget anymore, 3 years from then, does that come up again?
Yeah, they can vote to bring it back, or they can vote to continue to not vote on it.
Yeah, I believe that's covered in 704, isn't it, the repeal of the school budget?
Yeah, as long as the way it's worded reflects back to state law, yes, it should be covered.
No.
Is that Sue?
Yes. Sorry. I'm kind of multitasking here. My understanding, the last time I had looked at the state statute regarding the school budget, once it's voted down by the citizens to not have that vote, it doesn't come back automatically in 3 years. It would have to be brought forward similar to the process to add the municipal budget. They'd have to form a petition.
That's not what Matt told us a few weeks ago.
No.
Okay, so something's changed then.
My
Matt?
understanding, Sue, is that each 3 years, if they vote it down, like this June,
Correct?
if you read state law, 3 years after that, the question goes back on the ballot again. They could vote it back in at that point in time, or they could vote to keep it out.
Okay,
That's the interpretation of the state law.
okay.
So while we're here, Steve, Maura's question on, we are currently on all the changes in section 703. Maura, maybe you can state your question again. It was
Yeah, I want to make sure that whatever way it's worded, you can just reflect this to the attorney, that we're following state law so that if it's voted to not do it for 3 years, that our charter doesn't supersede that. So, do you know what I'm saying? That we're following, that it actually reflects state law as well as is covered in the charter. That's all. Just make sure we're not adding a vote that could be eliminated by the state process.
Yeah, I understand that, Maura. I spent a lot of time on this when I was reviewing the state law on this and such. So right now, my understanding of what I've put in here is it's reverting back to that the Title 28 process. So if it's voted down by the public, then it's out for that 3-year period.
Yep.
At the end of the 3 years, I think unfortunately, we have to put that back on the ballot again, and they can vote it up or down again to vote on it or to not vote on it at that 3-year cycle.
Yeah, as long as we've definitely done that, and that, so we can take time. If people vote not to do it for 3 years, we can take a little break.
That's why a lot of the language that I put in here, because I was disappointed when the state occupied that space, it overrode our charter. So I was careful to put language in here that it's not overriding the state law because it can't. They've occupied that space. So I believe I have it correct, but we'll put that to legal review.
Steve, you want to go back to wherever we were, 610.4?
Yeah, so I did a gleaming of that. Yep, that's the sheet, Larissa.
610.3.
Yeah, so if you look at the sheet, what I have on here is, so for fiscal year '23, the amount, the $86,752,000 that you, $86,752,000 you see in column D in the fiscal year '23, that is the school and municipal budgets combined less the CIP. Charter says we have to be at 4%, so that raises $3.4 million, $3,470,000. You see that in column F. Then in column G, 1/2 of that is dedicated towards roads. Over in column J, we actually raised for this year's budget, and it was approved for $4,295,000. So see, you can see that, you know, we're $800,000 in excess of that currently. And also, because of the council directive and the bond elements, we raised $2.5 million, not the 1.7. So I had to put additional money into the CIP to get to that point for the streets and roads. So it left to the a net to CIP when you take the streets and roads out of $1,795,000. So we're at that level with a higher commitment to roads. So starting in '24, because that wouldn't be kicked in time. So I did a 2% escalator year over year as far as the budgets are concerned, because that's where we've been. So $88,499,000. The 4% would raise a $3.5 million. It's only a $69,000 increase, and that's been the difficulty. That $69,000 doesn't amount to much in the overall when you're doing streets, roads, and everything else. Then in fiscal year '25 is when the charter piece would kick in and would go to 4 1/4. The reason I did the quarter instead of the third, how do I get to 7.5? I'm not going to, it's going to be one side or the other. So I put the 1/4 point escalator in there, and then you can see how it spells out. And then the percent change year over year to the CIP and the dollar amount that's in there in column H and the percentage change in I. That's just the percentage change to the CIP, not the overall budget, obviously. But I think it's the H, the dollar amount in there. So knowing that the council has put a directive out there to push that up to $4 million a year, if you scroll down, Larissa, you can see that in years 14 and 15, you're raising the $8 million for the capital program. Half of that is $4.1 million for the street. So you get there, right?
Yeah, the reality is we're not, by putting this in charter, all we're doing is committing to it, committing to what you're already doing anyway, except you're doing it as part of the annual budget review process. This is saying it will happen according to charter.
Yes, but I was more comfortable after I put the dollars there.
Okay.
It doesn't take much. I mean, you get a totally different city council who doesn't want to commit to that. They want to commit to lower taxes, and you know, so it is good to put it in charter.
All right. Any questions or issues on that 610.3? Okay. So we'll go back up to where we were, 703, I think. Any issues on 703? Sorry. Steve, I'm going to trust your language here because.
Just a minute, I'm getting to 703 here. Wow, what the heck is it? Yeah, 703.
704, it's just striking an entire section. 705.1, 2, Article 8.
So Article 8 adds, makes the correction, it should be as provided in Article 4 for the assessor, and then in 5.2, wherever that was, I added the assessor to the list of council-appointed positions.
Yep. That's it for Article 8. Article 9, 903.3. This was the planning board, 4-member from the conversation last time. Nothing else in Article 9. Article 10. Article 10, there was nothing. Article 11, 1102.1.
Yeah, so I just put a reference in there as to whether the wards are still needed. I did talk with Sue Cody on this as well, and at the end of that conversation, you know, the two of us standing alone decided we should just leave this alone, because the council's already consolidated into 3 wards. There is a hope at some point in time to be able to consolidate down to a single voting ward, you know, to have one voter location. We haven't been able to accomplish that as of yet. But at this point in time, it's really not a concern. So we would recommend no change there.
Okay. Sorry, I was going back. Nothing else in Article 11, Article 12. I don't see anything in Article 12. Article 13. And nothing in Article 13. Article 14 was potentially a change in the swearing.
All right, so Sue is going to offer us a shorter oath of office there.
I believe that Sue changed her mind on that.
Oh, okay, so we're going to leave that alone?
Okay.
Yep, I think she's probably on a call. They're a little short-staffed today, but she emailed me this morning.
Okay.
And mentioned that.
So we can leave that. And then Section 14, Article 14, Section 1406, that was going to be subject to legal opinion. Steve?
So you know, this talks about a plural number may include the singular, and words importing the masculine gender shall include the feminine gender. So I don't know what to put there in today's world where, you know, gender identity is supposed to be absolutely neutral, not just the two. There's more than one gender identity. So I'm going to ask legal counsel if there's if Attorney Saucier recommends anything here for this 1406, it would be more inclusive than what we have here currently.
Okay.
And absent the legal recommendation, I'm gonna do this, because this is a field all unto itself.
Yep. So you're just going to provide whatever the legal recommendation is, and that'll be what the vote is on.
Yep.
And then I think we're into definitions.
So the first is, it's a new F, it's city office. It shall mean those positions that are recognized and established by the charter that hold independent and standing authority. So this is, like when you asked the question, Jack, about your ability to serve here, this is right from legal counsel. That hold independent and standing authority pursuant to election or appointment by the city council. City office shall not include appointed committee positions advisory to city office positions established by this charter. So that's always been the question when they get into this advisory aspect. You know, Trails Committee, this committee, and other committees, even the Budget Committee and such under that. So that was that separation that legal counsel gave us in this last review.
The Department of Education, municipal officer, municipal officers. I don't.
So municipal officers, that's used throughout the charter. So I put municipal officers. It is collectively all elected city councilors and comprises and serves as the legislative body of the city pursuant to 30A, and I've referenced the two, Chapter 123 of municipal, in Chapter 123, municipal officers. That's where it defines the city. You know, when you go into the definitions, you have town, city, and quasi-municipal. And, you know, for a city, it specifically references your charter and that the city council is the legislative body. And then the next three, order, ordinance, and resolution. And when I talked years ago with Brian Dench on this, that did all of the work on the charter, he says, yes, it's a bit ambiguous. It's not defined anywhere in the charter, and it should have been defined. So this is my best attempt at defining those three acts as being distinctly different. Then, after defining those, again, I went back and searched everywhere that they appear. So an order shall mean the action items that are the result of the vote of the council and thereby state the will of the municipal officers subsequent to full consideration in a public council meeting. Ordinance, that's well-defined, shall mean the act of voted ordinance authority and limitations as a local law of the city council by the charter and ordinance power pursuant to, and I gave the state reference there, that specifically allows a council to do that as a legislative body. And then a resolution shall mean the voted decree of the city council, designation, recognition of a person, organization, event, call to action, or firm decision of order or not to order, providing a directive.
I'm not an attorney, so those look fine to me.
Yeah, so we'll let legal review those.
Article 15, we decided to leave alone, I believe. And that gets us to the end. Real quick, I wanted to go back to section 618, because I just want to make sure I understand. The part that I had question on was, if the voters fail to adopt a school budget by July 1st for any reason, the amount appropriated and submitted to the voters for validation is considered the budget for operational expenses for the next fiscal year until a final budget is approved. And do I read that as to say that the budget that the voters just voted down is still the budget if?
It is. It is, because
But that isn't the way it is now.
yes, it is the way it is now, because we had to go through that legal review. So the one time the school budget was voted down, we went through that legal review, and when you look at the timing in 20A, Section 14, so it's 14, 85, 86, and 87, are the three pertinent sections in there. So the city council is a legislative body. There's not a separate school budget referendum committee. The charter establishes the council as being the voting authority, the legislative authority that approves that school budget. So when that was voted down in early June, you look at the timing, it takes 5 days before the clerk submits that, and then there's not sooner than 10, but not more than 45 before you can go out again and such and that. So you look at that, you're going to hit that July 1st time frame every time. So you have to commit your taxes. What do you commit the taxes on? And the legal opinion points to this 1487 that says you commit your budget is committed for the school board based upon the last voted budget by this budget committee, or in the case of a city, the city council. So the council voted that. So you carry forward with that until such time if the voters put something different in place, you do that on a month-to-month basis. If they put something different in place thereafter, which they didn't at that juncture, you would amend it at that point in time. And therefore, your tax commitment still goes forward, and that's where I go into this almost fallacy of the people voting on this, because they could vote it down,
But it would still go.
The tax commitment is still going.
So why does it go back to vote then?
Because that's the state law. Ask Governor Baldock.
So they could keep rejecting it, but the budget will keep going as it was proposed?
Until such time as they approve something either the same or something different.
That's really weird.
That's the
Because the way that I read the
not
crossed
ours.
out part, and the way, Jack, I think you and I talked about this, we thought that the budget would revert to for the current operation for the current fiscal year shall be deemed adopted for the following fiscal year on a month-to-month basis. I read that to mean the year you were in, the prior year, basically, would get adopted on a month-to-month basis.
So,
In the federal world, if there's a continuing resolution, you operate on the previous year's budget until Congress passes something. I know this is
Right.
not the feds, but
this is not the feds. This was all when Baldacci created the RSUs and all of that madness that took place. I get upset, right? Right? Do you get upset about it? I get upset about it. That fouled up so much that it's just, I'm not over it yet. Never will be. That was in exchange for an increase in general purpose aid, which became essential programs and services right after that was enacted. Changed all the rules again, because the municipalities couldn't be trusted with new levels of funding. The LD1 calculation came in in exchange for that and everything else, so.
So, but
My-
are you saying, go ahead, sorry, Matt.
Yeah, so, my understanding prior to this process was we would not be able to adopt the budget until it was approved by the voters. And then we would make that adjustment when it was approved. What Steve is saying, that tax commitment has already gone out. So then we'd have to be able to, I don't know what happens with that change, if it was money added to it or money taken away. We would probably be still running that budget to the point that when it's done, the end of the year, we would, in theory, have a carryover of money based on that adjustment to the budget. Do I have that right, Steve?
Section 1487. Yeah, I'm just,
Because I would revert back to our old budget of what we had.
Well, that's what I thought it was, but Steve's saying,
well, yes, but the taxes are going to be committed on what was submitted to the voters. You'll revert back to, for operational piece, but the taxes will be committed otherwise.
and where would the money go?
So you would end, if they vote, so you're operating month to month, right, on last year's approved budget, and they vote some budget that's slightly smaller than what was approved.
No, the other way, though.
Then there's going to be a reserve there for the school department that they can kick for the next year.
So make my numbers simple, because I don't remember the school budget. The school budget for the current year is $40 million. The proposed budget that gets sent to vote is for $44 million. It gets rejected. $44 million, until it ever gets approved, the $44 million is what's being raised. They can only spend at the $40 million level. There's $4 million extra dollars there, or prorated over 12 months, $333,000 a month or whatever, that's gonna be in surplus sitting somewhere, taxpayer money collected but not spent.
Yes, but I'm.
Where does it
yeah,
go?
I'm just finding, it's gonna
To
lapse the surplus. right?
Undesignated funds?
Yes, no, it's going to be available for the school to use in the next fiscal year. Larissa, can you pull up Title 20A, Section 1487?
What would the incentive be for, why wouldn't,
Is everybody starting to understand just how ludicrous that school voting process is?
well,
It's
under
meaningless.
under this, yes, because essentially, the council can do whatever it wants. There's no incentive to ever come back to the voters with a budget that the voters would pass.
Oh, I think there is the incentive. If the people speak, you have to listen to that and bring back
Why?
something different than that.
but you're still taxing them on
Still taxing them,
what the
right?
council
Why
approved.
would you have, what incentive is there to listen to them?
Because they're responsible to the voters.
Yeah, but if you had $4 million in surplus, would that reduce the amount of tax commitment for the next fiscal year? So the $4 million would come back in. It's not lost money. It doesn't,
Well, yeah, it's there, but then they could just
14.
approve I mean, in the budget
Not
for the...
there for them to pull back in, they can't spend it. So in the next fiscal year, when they submit their budget, that 4 million would not be needed for the tax revenue, in other words.
Oh,
But then they could just raise it again,
yeah.
and then it could be an $8 million surplus the following year, or whatever.
Okay, so there's the key to it right there. It says, if a budget for the operation of a regional school unit is not approved prior to July 1st, so that's always going to be the situation if it's turned down early June. The latest budget approved at a regional school unit budget meeting and submitted to the voters for validation at a referendum in accordance with Section 1486, that's our process that we use. The council approves it and it's submitted, is automatically considered the budget for operational expenses for the ensuing year until a final budget is approved, except that when the regional school unit board delays the regional school unit budget meeting, and then on and on and on. So it goes with what the council votes in,
So if
that's
the
what they
budget-
operate on.
Budget committee meeting meets in February through April, they make their presentation, city council approves it. That's the one they're referring to. They're referring to not the last voter-approved budget, they're referring to the
one
last
that was
approved
submitted.
budget by council and city, and by
Because that
budget
was
committee and council.
submitted by the legislative body, so we don't use a regional school unit budget meeting because we are a department, it's a school department. The council approves that, that's allowed pursuant to state law. That's what carries forward. That's what you commit your taxes on. That's what they use as a budget until such time that somebody votes something different than that. It is a wasted process. So if it's
I did not know that part of the
it's
process.
voted in the second week in June, there isn't time enough, you can't bring it back in time for July 1st.
If I had known that, the entire reason for the budget committee goes away.
I don't think so, Lance, from the perspective that I support having in Article 6, the budget committee process and the budget review and consideration process is being defined, because absent that, there still has to be, the council still is the legislative body that's been empowered by the charter to approve both the municipal and the school budget. There has to be a review process, right? Otherwise,
review's already
they're
done
gonna
by
be they're going to be winging that. They could do it by rules of procedure or such under that. I think it's very favorable to have that in the budget, that this is the process, and this is who comprises it, and this is the time frame that they will do it annually and such under that. And I see the value of dealing with two very large, complex budgets for having 12 elected officials all in the same room, accountable for their respective budgets, hearing the complexities from the both, because it's one tax bill that goes out there, and it provides for a greater opportunity, at a minimum on an annual basis, to find areas that we can cooperate in more fully and things of that nature.
I like that too, but the charter isn't needed for that. The council already has the ability to be able to do that. And
Well, the council had the ability to fully fund capital improvements as well, and
Sure.
there's been
But
recognized
by
there's a
changing it in
shortfall there,
charter,
so
you're
we're gonna
not-
put it in the charter.
Understood, but it's, what really has to change is the council has to decide how they want to manage the budget through the year, so, I don't
And
know.
the other reason why I support that is, if you have 3 very involved city councilors and 4 that are less involved in the budget committee process and the review, when that school board budget comes forward, they may be very accountable for the municipal budget, but then you're going to hand them a very large and complex school budget. And if they haven't been through that with a fine-tooth comb, it is a deficient vote, in my opinion.
Well, again, I don't know that should be driven by charter necessarily, that's just up to councilors to be prepared. But, okay, we can, we've already decided on and I like the idea of the school committee and the city council meeting through the year, but I guess my point is that they always had that ability. They didn't need this to create that.
Yeah, but they may not have done it if it's not in this.
Gives them more eyes on the process.
Yeah,
So, what I've heard through the process is, And I've defended adamantly, the city is a representative republic. There it is, right? But you also want accountability, right? So to the voters, for the people that voted you into office, you want to be accountable to them. And Article 6 and 7 lays out that process of the accountability for one of the most essential and important functions that the legislative bodies do, which is the school and city budget.
And so in this section 618, the municipal budget would have, if we had put back the municipal budget to vote, it would have worked the same way. If it gets voted on and rejected, it would still be in effect. The budget would still be just like we're saying with the school, it would still be in effect until such time as the voters approved a budget.
If you put that type of a process in.
If we had put it back, it would be the same kind of meaningless situation, I guess. The vote thing is crazy to me.
So does all this language even have to be here? Because we have to follow 1487.
I put it in there specifically because that's where you can go find it, as amended from time to time.
To keep somebody from having to chase down 1487.
Yeah, for somebody like me who was reading this and probably wasn't going to go chase that down, like I clearly misread the way it was to begin with.
Because it sounds to me like we have to follow it anyway, and I do think it makes a difference if the voters vote it down, it reduces the budget. Yes, you have a surplus, but my guess is a surplus would then reduce the tax burden on the following fiscal year, but maybe that's not completely correct.
Because it says, for any reason, the amounts appropriated and submitted to the voters for validation is considered the budget for operational expenses. That's what 1487 says.
Yes, yep.
Where does that surplus, where would that, in theory, we haven't run into it, but where would that surplus be kept? In my example, $333,000 a month. Where would that be kept until such time as
Well, it would lapse to undesignated,
it be on undesignated funds?
because you raised it in excess. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean the school department can just continue on with what they wanted to do, even though the voters have told them not to do that.
Why doesn't it mean that? I mean, again,
Because
just,
they have a budget to follow.
well, from a spending side, it just accumulates in the undesignated funds, though. Okay.
I think it will matter, is what I'm saying.
Well, it sucks. You have to raise the funds, and then you have this false problem for, like, you're grabbing that money back out to offset the next year's budget, which falsely pushes increase in taxes back another year. It messes up the whole thing.
But the
So
bottom
I
line,
understand what Lance is saying. It's extremely frustrating because it messes up multiple years in a row of what the tax bills truly are, should be. Yeah, it screws it all up. But, that's poor legislative writing. It's, if they wanted school budgets to have some sort of a check and balance system, they should have done a better job of, maybe getting their funding information out earlier so everybody could have earlier votes and have plenty of time before July 1st to figure things out. I don't know. State always screws us up.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I'm spending too much time here because it's this statute that's here, so there's nothing that can be done about that particular part of
What
it.
can undesignated funds be used for?
Anything.
Council can apportion those as they see fit.
And the school has their own undesignated funds.
but we can't fix it. That's the
We
bottom
can't
line.
fix this
State
part of
law.
it.
We can't fix it. But I think what we've done with the Budget Committee is we've created a meaningful process that hopefully will prevent this from happening. You have the citizen involvement, you have the elected officials all at the table. Hopefully, any major issues will get fixed there. That doesn't prevent your vigilante going out and putting up signs, but we can't help that. That's the
So
way it
I
is.
can think back just a few years ago when SAD 48, I don't know what the RSU number, but the Nokomis, they voted on that 6 times on that budget. It's been a problematic district forever. That's where
How
I
much does
grew
it
up.
cost to?
Just look at Scarborough. That's constant.
Yeah, but they voted on that budget 6 times before it was finally approved, and it was approved to the exact dollar amount was where it started, right? So look at the process in that. Taxes have been committed, bills have gone out.
How much does it cost, how much does it cost us
Here,
to?
Minimum
An
of
election.
about $4,500 to $5,000 to do an election.
So I said earlier that this would make me rethink the budget committee. I probably misspoke there. What it makes me think is sort of the hand-wringing I had around, you know, I voted for or against not putting back the right to vote for the voters. But the vote doesn't matter.
No.
In the end, it usually
In the end, the vote doesn't matter because even if the voters continually voted a budget down, the money being collected would be the same either way.
I think it depends what the issue is, and I'm not going to come up with good examples, but what it comes down to, and in my experience with a quasi-municipal budget, which is separate from the city, and I think we've heard the same thing both from Steve and from the city councilors on a committee, people want the tasks and the work done that are included in the budget, but they don't want to pay for it. They want you to do it for nothing, which is impossible. So I think that's what comes down to in this one that was voted on 6 times. It was a realization that, yes, the voters do want them to conduct the business and make the improvements that they said they were going to make. They just don't want to pay for it. And finally, in the end, you say, well, what the heck, I guess I got to pay for it. I mean, we all deal with that in our personal budgets. You know, you don't want to get a new car, but you can't keep paying for the repairs on the old car. You just hate doing it. Eventually, you just get the new car and pay for it. I think that's what it comes down to, and it's an ugly process. It really is.
Ultimately, that sounds like a situation where somebody blinked, like the council for them was on one side and the voters were on another side, and eventually the voters eventually said, okay, I guess we'll accept the original budget
Say
as
the
it
school
was.
department wants to implement a whole other separate program that's going to, add 25% to the budget for some reason. That would be a situation, I think, where voters overruling it may mean you don't move forward with that. I would hope that would be handled in a different manner, but the regular process is just a matter, unfortunately, of the voters not wanting to pay the taxes to do what they want the city to do. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating, but that's the process.
Larissa, could you pull up section 1301, petition for enactment of ordinances?
I mean, usually for the school budget vote, it's the older people that vote all the time. It's parents of students and teachers that live in the districts.
Yeah, you'll see that depending on what else is on the ballot, you'll see what the turnout numbers are, and usually that turnout is low.
Yeah, generally after 2 o'clock, that's when the teachers come in.
1301 is what we're going to be referring to.
Yeah, no, not in the state law, in the charter. So when you look at, so in the charter, it says that when the city council adopts the municipal budget, it is, and it is an act of ordinance. So it's defined in the charter. So they adopt the budget, it's an act of ordinance. 1301, petition for enactment of ordinances, specifically says the voter shall have power to propose ordinances to the council, and if the council fails to adopt an ordinance so proposed without any change in substance, to adopt or reject in the election, comma, provided that such power shall not extend to the budget or capital program. The council has taken that space pursuant to this charter, just reserved as such. You can't enact by citizens petition an ordinance that would override their action on the budget or the capital program. Done. I forgot that was in here, but it is in here. Can't impact levy of taxes, salaries on municipal officials or employees, or ordinances by law that are exclusively reserved to the municipal officials.
So if the citizens, put in plain language, if the citizens wanted to petition to, against the approved budget by the city council,
Can't,
they cannot.
they cannot. Or the capital program.
So they can't bring the vote back on the budget.
They cannot.
According to charter. Could we
No,
change
you-
the charter?
You could amend your charter to bring that back, yes. But right now, once the council approves that municipal budget, it cannot be petitioned. They could petition it, but they can't call to enact an ordinance that would override the council's authority to put a budget in.
So we've been making reference in this process that the city, that it would be easy for a citizen to get their signatures and everything and be able to get the municipal part of the, be able to vote on the municipal part of the budget.
That they could do. They could amend the charter for that.
But ultimately, that's a useless exercise because of what we just talked about, that ultimately the money collected is going to be the same no matter what.
Taxes will be committed in that year.
Catch 22.
Yeah. Do we want to have any energy around changing the wording in section 1301 to say, to eliminate basically the provided that such power shall not extend to the budget or capital programs of any ordinance,
That would be a revision.
which we cannot do?
I will guarantee that that's a revision because it takes power away from the legislative body as defined in the charter. I believe, but I'll ask that legal question.
So they can't petition against the past budget, but they could petition to amend the ordinance such that future budgets will be voted on. So the power is
Could
still
do that,
there
yes.
for them to
But
do
the
that.
future budget being voted on is a meaningless vote.
Pretty much.
I
Because the
don't know as I
money,
agree it's meaningless. So you're going to get the tax commitment, okay? And then you're going to have a surplus if the budget is changed due to that vote. Now, if the city council decides to just do operations the way they were going to do them and take that surplus in,
then they risk getting voted out.
then you risk stuff at the ballot box. So I don't think it's meaningless, but does it affect the change that people think that it may affect? No,
I
it
agree.
doesn't, but that's because you have to be able to continue to conduct business in this sort of interim area.
The average person doesn't lay awake at night and get angry about this stuff as I have over the years. Because, yeah. I'm going to withhold some of my editorial comments, but
Before we send Steve down a rabbit hole, do we even have any, it was just my thought to eliminate that language in section 1301. Do we have any real energy around that, or are we okay leaving it as it is? I don't want to speak for the group.
I think that would leave the city unable to fulfill some of its contractual and possibly debt service commitments if you were to take that out. Am I wrong in saying that, or?
you're not wrong, no. I mean, the reason I pointed this out, I just wanted to make sure that the committee was aware that
Yeah, thank you.
that power is not there for the people currently. And quite honestly, I had forgotten about that until I was going through this with a fine-tooth comb doing the red line.
So I don't know if anybody, we got the two counselors on the Zoom. I'm not sensing a lot of urgency around sending him down a
No.
path seeking legal counsel.
I hear
Not
what
for
you're
me.
saying.
I mean, I go back to Dave's comment, and I've listened carefully to everything that's been said, but, you know, Dave's comment was you have to be able to do business. And on both sides, both the municipal side and the school side, you have to be able to do business. And, but that does create the dilemma of the possible surplus and, et cetera, et cetera. But this is one of those things, I guess, has worked for 10 years. Maybe just move on with it.
And if the voters were to enact a process by which the budget again has to go to the voters, and it was turned down by the voters, and we went through all of that, I would be shocked if that did not affect change in the budget.
Yeah.
I really would.
I think I'm probably pushing on this a little harder than I need to, but part of it is I'm afraid I'm going to, as chairperson of this committee, I'm afraid I'm going to get like personal.
No, this is
like,
good. This is-
what the heck were you guys thinking?
I think this
I'm
is leading to an understanding of all of us as to how it works and why it is the way it is.
For me, this whole discussion goes back to the importance of Article 6 and 7, really defining that for the accountability of the elected officials and the 5 people that you put in there to represent, the voters, aside from the elected officials, that by keeping that well-defined process in place, and providing the avenues of, this public hearing there, public hearing at the council level for the citizens' input to affect it there.
I think we're strengthening a process that has already proven itself over the last 10 years. There hasn't been outrage. There hasn't been outrage, and there hasn't been the fighting between the school committee and the city council that there used to be. So I think we're taking...
That's an extremely important point, Dave. There hasn't been the fighting in municipal government like there used to be.
And we're making it better. I think
under
we're
the current
strengthening
charter.
it.
Right.
Well, and the other issue that I have, for the year that the people voted down the school budget, why did they vote it down? You don't know. What do you have to do to amend it to come back to get a positive vote? You don't know.
There were big signs,
Yeah. Yeah.
as I
My
recall.
belief, it all still comes back to orange bags. Every single vote, I think, has come back to orange bags.
Do what?
Whereas, in a public hearing process, people come and they express their concern about a specific part of the budget, right?
Yeah.
They tell the people in power where it is that they're looking for change. You can react to that. A no vote, okay, it's a no vote. Why? Why? What? You don't know.
Yeah, well, with respect to the budget, everybody here, I think, knows sort of my background and kind of my thoughts on the budget and the process. And again, we can change the charter to say who's on the committee and so forth, but it's really the process itself within the council and the school committee that is the most important part of it. What we're doing here isn't really changing anything in terms of who's responsible and who has to make the decisions and who's always made the decisions, so.
I think it ends up being the conversations you have during that process, which are different from, what you're doing for students. It's, okay, let's now switch from what the school committee's been talking about, and let's talk about, okay, now that they've decided what they need for students, how do we determine, how this works at a taxpayer level? I think it's a different way of conversing about the same topic.
Well, and more to that point, we spent a lot of time talking about how the school committee and the city council and whoever gets along and there isn't fighting going on. I'm not opposed to more fighting if it's done respectfully. Fighting can be used in different ways. I don't mean fighting, I just mean debate and disagreement, and it doesn't all have to be friendly, I guess.
Debate is well.
Productive conversation.
Yeah. Okay. We're off topic, or sort of loosely on topic. Are we okay with all the red line items as we've identified today, plus any reviews to legal counsel? Okay.
Yep.
All right, any other comments? Otherwise, we'll adjourn. Okay, we'll adjourn.